Hi, I am Priyanka Sahu from Priyanka Sahu online classes. Today we will discuss laws of chemical combination. In the last video we already discussed what is laws of conservation of mass and what is laws of constant composition. Today we will discuss about laws of multiple proportion. Law of multiple proportion. This law was studied by Dalton in 1804. What is law of multiple proportion? When two elements combine to form two or more chemical compounds, then the masses of one of the elements which combine with a fixed mass of the other bear a simple ratio to one another. जदि दीटा मौलिक परस्पर सहित मिसी यौगिक प्रस्तुत करती दुई एक रु अधिक दुई तीन यहीपरि यौगिक प्रस्तुत करती आ गोटे मौलिक जदि फिक्स रुहे ताहले कौन हम अन्य मौलिकटी सब बेले कौन हम सिंपल रेशियो से मानक भितर कौन हम सिंपल रेशियो हम. लेट अस टेक एन एग्जांपल टू अंडरस्टैंड दिस लॉ. लेट अस two elements, that is carbon and oxygen. Carbon and oxygen combine each other to form carbon monoxide and also carbon dioxide. See here, the carbon 12 parts by mass of carbon combine with 16 parts by mass of oxygen, and here 12 parts by mass of carbon combine with 16 into 2 32 parts by mass of oxygen. Here oxygen combined with 12 parts by mass of carbon. Here oxygen combined with 12 parts by mass of carbon. So here carbon, the mass of carbon is fixed, but the mass of oxygen change. एठी कौन होची कार्बन रो कौन मास टा फिक्स रहूची किंतु ऑक्सीजन कौन होची चेंज होची. एठी भी दीटा कार्बन और ऑक्सीजन परस्पर सहित यौगिक करछंती. एठी मध्य कार्बन और ऑक्सीजन परस्पर सहित मिसिकी यौगिक प्रस्तुत करिछंती. जदि एठी गोटे मौलिक the masses of one of the elements which combine with a fixed mass. एठी कौन हेची कार्बन कौन हेची फिक्स अछि. एठी किंतु कौन हेची ना ऑक्सीजन रो मास चेंज हेची. ताहले एठी कौन हबो ना ए ऑक्सीजन रो मास ए रेशियो एठी ऑक्सीजन आ ए ऑक्सीजन रो मास रो रेशियो सब बेले कौन हबो सिंपल रेशियो. सिंपल माने कौन ये तार 2 गुणा हे पारे 3 गुणा हे पारे 4 गुणा हे पारे रेशियो 2 गुणा 3 गुणा 4 गुणा एमती हम किंतु कौन हम डिविजन हम 1.5 2.5 एमती हम नहीं भग्न संख्या हम नहीं. सो हियर द रेशियो बिटवीन द मास ऑफ ऑक्सीजन in carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide is 16:32 and if we divide then we find 1:2. So 1:2 is a simple ratio. ये होची यार 2 गुणा. Let us take another example. Two elements, that is sulfur and oxygen. When two elements combine to form two or more chemical compounds, sulfur and oxygen combine each other and form sulfur dioxide and also sulfur trioxide. So here two elements form two compounds, sulfur dioxide and sulfur trioxide. Here the mass of sulfur is 32 or 32 parts by mass of sulfur combined with 16 into 2. ये हे गला केते 32 parts by mass of oxygen, and here 32 parts by mass of sulfur combined with 16 into 3 48 parts by mass of oxygen. Here the mass of sulfur is 32 and also the mass of sulfur is 32. In sulfur dioxide the mass of sulfur is 32 and also here 32 parts by mass of sulfur combined with oxygen. So in two compounds the mass of sulfur is fixed. एटी कौन है sulfur mass है fixed, but here the mass of oxygen changes. Here the mass of oxygen is 32 and here the mass of oxygen is 48. So the ratio between these two between two compounds is oxygen. Here the mass of oxygen is 32 and here the mass of oxygen is 48. So we find 2:3. So the ratio between two oxygen in sulfur dioxide and sulfur trioxide is 2:3. So 2:3 is a simple ratio. Let us take another example, nitrogen and oxygen. Nitrogen and oxygen combine each other form nitrogen, nitrous oxide, N2O, nitric oxide, NO, nitrogen trioxide, N2O3, nitrogen tetroxide, N2O4, nitrogen pentaxide, N2O5. So here nitrogen and oxygen, two elements combine each other to form 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 compounds. So when two elements combine to form two or more chemical compounds, so here nitrogen and oxygen form 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 compounds. So here the molar mass हिसाब रे आमे नबा, the mass of nitrogen is 28. Nitrogen hela kete 7 and 14 and here two nitrogen, dita nitrogen अछि tenu the mass hela 28 and here the mass of oxygen is 16. The mass of nitrogen and oxygen. The mass of nitrogen here is 28. The mass of oxygen is 16. The mass of nitrogen is 14 and the mass of oxygen is 16. The mass of nitrogen is 28 and the mass of oxygen तीनोटी oxygen अछि 16 की 48. The mass of nitrogen here is 28 and the mass of oxygen is 64. The mass of oxygen in nitrogen is 28 and the mass of oxygen is 80. So here look, nitrogen 28, nitrogen 28, nitrogen 28, nitrogen 28. It is 8 कौन है 14 अच्छी तेणु आम यदि आपको सम्मान करने चाहिए ये 28 कौन कले हम 2 गुणी देले ये यदि आम 2 गुणी देवा किंतु 2 गुणी देले ये कौन हो नाइट्रिक ऑक्साइड ये कौन हो नाइट्रस ऑक्साइड रे परिणत हो नाइट्रस ऑक्साइड रे. सो आम कौन करवा ये गुणवानी आम कौन करवा ये गुणवा तो ये कौन होगला बर्तमान दीटा नाइट्रोजेन होगला 28 ऑक्सीजन मध्य दीटा होगला तेणु ये होगला 32. बर्तमान कौन देखा आम रेशियो देखा हियर द मास ऑफ नाइट्रोजेन इज फिक्स देन द masses of one elements which combine with a fixed mass of the other. ऑक्सीजन कौन है सबुथिरे फिक्स्ड मास ऑफ नाइट्रोजेन सहित ये कौन कर कंबाइन कर सबुथिरे 28 रही. द मास ऑफ ऑक्सीजन भ्यारी ये 16 अच्छी 32, 48, 64, 80. जदि आम यार रेशियो नबा कौन हम रेशियो 16:, the ratio of oxygen is 16:38:48:64:80. So ये कौन हो 1:2:3:4:5. So here the fixed mass of the other bear a simple ratio to one another. So ये कौन है simple ratio रे अछंती. ऑक्सीजन कौन अच्छी simple ratio 1:2:3:4:5. 1.1 कि 2.5 कि 3.3 एमती नहीं. So here the ratio is a simple ratio. Here is a question for you. Carbon is fixed. Carbon is found to form two oxides which contain 42.9% and 27.3% of carbon respectively. So that these figures illustrate the law of multiple proportion. ये law of multiple proportion रे अच्छी कि नहीं आमे देखिबा. So carbon is found to form two oxide. कार्बन दीटा ऑक्साइड करूची तार एलिमेंट किए किए रही निहाती गोटे तो कौन होची गोटे हला कार्बन आ गोटे होची ऑक्सीजन. So here carbon dioxide which contain 42.9% of carbon. In first compound carbon is 42.9% and in second compound carbon is 27.3%. So how many oxygen are, how the percentage of oxygen is what? 100% रू आपको माइनस कर दबा, ये केते हे गला 57.1%. and here the percentage of oxygen is what? 72.7%. So here carbon is 42.9% and oxygen is in first compound 42.9% carbon, 57.1% होची oxygen. and in this compound one compound first compound ये हला second compound 27.3% हला carbon and 72.7% हला oxygen. so आमे एठी कोन करिबा oxygen 57.1% carbon, 57.1% of oxygen oxygen is combined with 42.9% of carbon. 57.1% oxygen combined ହେଇଛି 42.9% of carbon. So 1% of oxygen is combined with 42.9 by 57.1 and that is 0.751. दशमिक हरण तो निहाती मने थिबो 42.9 विभक्त 57.1 is equal to 0.751%. 1% of oxygen combined with 0.751% of carbon. In second compound 72.7% of oxygen is combined with in first compound ये हला first compound ये हला second compound. So combined with 27.3% of carbon. 1% of oxygen is combined with 27.3 by 72.7 and is equal to 0.376% of carbon. एठी हमें कौन कले ऑक्सीजन टाको फिक्स करे देले 1% ऑफ ऑक्सीजन सहित गोटे परसेंट ऑक्सीजन सहित केते कार्बन कंबाइन होउची एठी 1% ऑक्सीजन सहित 0.751% कार्बन मिसिके कंपाउंड करिची एई द्वितीय कंपाउंड रे गोटे परसेंट ऑक्सीजन सहित 0.376% कार्बन मिसिके कोन करिची कंपाउंड तयारी करिची. सो हियर आमे देखिले कोन ना एठी ऑक्सीजन रो परसेंटेज ता मास कोन रहिची एठी फिक्स रहिची ऑक्सीजन कोन रहिची फिक्स रहिची. सो आमे कोन करिबा एठी कार्बन रो रेशियो बाहर करिबा केते. सो 0.751 is to 0.376 is equal to 2:1. So here 2:1 is a simple ratio.